Hi everyone, my name is Sean Hardwick, attorney at Hardwick & Krause, and today we're going to be talking about 3 misconceptions that people have before they go through the divorce process and during the divorce process. And so the first common misconception that people have is that they think they're going to get some sort of special treatment because they were the only ones who paid for the mortgage during the marriage. And so if a house was purchased during the marriage, that means that funds from both people were used to purchase the house, because once you get married, in most situations, all of the money's pooled together. So it doesn't matter if more money came from the husband, more money came from the wife. That's all marital, and all that was used to purchase the house. And then if one spouse, let's just say the wife, makes more payments, or all of the payments, all of the mortgage payments during the marriage, and they pay all the utilities, all the electricity bill, all of the internet, all of the phone bills, all of that is considered marital. Each party is 50% responsible for those obligations, but the money that's used to pay for those things is marital. So, if you're the person who's making $80,000 and your spouse is making $40,000, it doesn't matter if someone's contributing more or not contributing at all. All of that money is considered, all of that 120 that I just talked about is considered marital and is being used towards those things. And it doesn't matter if you have a joint account or if you have separate accounts, all of that is considered marital because it was money that was earned during the marriage. So you paying each month for the mortgage and you paying each month for electricity, internet, water bill, all of that stuff, all of that is marital, and you're not going to get any sort of special treatment for paying for those things during the marriage. Now, obviously, these are just common misconceptions. Your situation might be a little bit different. So the second misconception that people have is that they think that just because their partner cheats, that there's going to be some sort of repercussions for that. So in some cases that's true, but in most cases it's not true. Just because your husband or your wife goes and has a relationship with somebody else, that in and of itself is going to have no bearing on your divorce. Just because they go and have a physical relationship is not going to impact your divorce in any sort of way. Now, it could have an impact if the husband or the wife is now spending money on that other person, because now they're using marital money to fund an affair, and that money needs to be taken into account because it's a waste of the marital money. But them just having a good time with somebody else and not paying for it, that's going to have no effect on the divorce. They're not going to get chewed out by the judge or anything like that, and they're not going to, be punished in any sort of way just for that alone. Another way it could have an impact is if they enter into a new relationship, they have a new boyfriend, they have a new girlfriend, and that new boyfriend or new girlfriend is now paying or funding their life. So if they're paying for your spouse, for their rent or for their car or any of those things, then they've entered what's called a supportive relationship. And if your spouse has entered into a supportive relationship, that's going to have an impact on the divorce when it comes to paying alimony and that type of stuff. But generally speaking, in a lot of situations, just because your spouse is cheating is not going to have an impact on your divorce. So the third common misconception that people have before and going through the divorce process is that they think that their spouse is going to pay for their attorney's fees. Now, there are situations where the spouse could pay for your attorney's fees, but in most cases, that's not going to happen. So what you need to prove to get attorney's fees is a few different things. One is you have the need for attorney's fees, and that's typically the easiest to prove, right? you need an attorney to represent you. Maybe you don't have a ton of money to spend on an attorney. So that's typically the easiest threshold to overcome. The harder part is proving that your spouse has the ability to pay for your attorney's fees on top of theirs. Or if they don't have an attorney, then it's going to be even harder, because if they could afford one, they'd get one. The other way that your spouse could pay for your attorney's fees is if they engage in some malicious conduct. It's called a vexatious litigation, which means if they basically take some purposeful steps to make the divorce substantially harder than it needs to be, if they're consistently not following court orders, if they're doing things just to harass you and delay the process substantially, then you can ask the court for the other spouse to pay for your attorney's fees for those reasons. But for a lot of situations, you're most likely not going to be granted attorney's fees from the spouse that you're divorcing from. It's something that your attorney can always request and pursue, but just to set the expectation, there are a lot of situations where your spouse is not going to be paying for your attorney. So those are just 3 common misconceptions that people have before and going through the divorce process. Obviously, there's a lot more, and your situation is very specific. So these are just some general things to think about. Your situation might be a little bit different, and so it's good to speak to a seasoned family law attorney about your specific issue in case there's any sort of nuances where these general misconceptions would not apply. If you need any help navigating through any of these things, we're more than happy to help. You can visit us online at hardwickkrause.com or give us a call at 772-208-3118.